Welcome. Welcome to the 2023 AGM Annual General Meeting for the Canadian Canoe Museum. We're so glad you could join us. My name is Victoria Grant, and I'm the chair of the Canadian Canoe Museum Board of Directors. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. Before we begin, the Canoe Museum respectfully acknowledges that we are situated on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and the traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties First Nations. The Canadian Canoe Museum also recognizes the contributions of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples in shaping this community and this country as a whole. We have members all over the country, so we encourage you to also recognize whose land you are joining us from by typing it in the chat. As an organization that stewards the world's largest and most significant collections of canoes, kayaks, and paddled watercraft, we will honor and share the cultural histories and stories within the collection in all that we do. As you may have heard us say, 2023 is the year of the Canadian Canoe Museum, as we will finally reach our final destination at the end of this long portage, our beautiful waterfront home on the shores of Little Lake. Before we can celebrate that momentous occasion, we have to look back and honor our journey of how we got there. Tonight, we will be reflecting on 2022, which seems so long ago with the pace our new museum project moves. It was an exciting year, and we look forward to reviewing it together. At this point, I'll turn it over to Kate Kendington, our development officer, to walk you through the technical details of how this meeting will be run.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The AGM should last for less than an hour and will be followed by a presentation reflecting on 2022 and a progress update on the new museum by our Executive Director and Curator. We will aim to be finished by 7:30 p.m. And we do have a lot of people joining us today, both all across the country. And as it is a webinar, your camera and microphones will remain off. Please also note that this meeting is being recorded. Automated closed captioning is on for accessibility. If you'd like to turn it off for yourself, click the CC button at the bottom of your screen and then select Hide Subtitles. We will be explaining the voting process for this evening and technical considerations in a moment, but please note if you are experiencing any technical issues, we do have staff standing by to support you. You can ask a question in the chat located at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to help you. We will begin by asking everyone to type your full name in the chat box now so that we can record your attendance and determine quorum. And thank you. I will now pass it back over to our chair, Victoria Grant.
It is my pleasure to call our annual general meeting to order. All members who were in good standing 30 days in advance of our AGM are eligible to vote and receive an AGM package, an annual general meeting package, the agenda, the proxy form, minutes from last year, and audited financial statements by email or viewed them on the dedicated annual general meeting website. This package included all resolutions that will be debated or voted upon today. Our quorum is 20 members or 10% of our members, whichever is lowest. We have 394 memberships in good standing, so therefore 20 members constitute quorum. Kate, can you confirm that we have 20 members or more present?
Yes, Madam Chair, I can confirm that we have more than 20 members are present.
Thank you. As outlined in our virtual annual meeting, general meeting processes that were distributed by email to all members, we are using an assumed consent voting process. Therefore, we will be assuming all members in attendance or voting by proxy are voting in favor of motions unless objections are otherwise made. but which I will ask each time and leave a pause for people to object. Members of the Board of Directors will be moving and seconding motions. If you would like to object to a motion, please enter your objection using the chat function. Please note, to ensure we can keep discussion and the meeting moving, we request that you keep any inquiries to one question and one follow-up per person per agenda item. Approval, the agenda. Today's agenda was pre-circulated in advance of this meeting. Our proposed agenda is the approval of the 2022 annual meeting minutes from Wednesday, June 15, 2022. Approval of the 2022 audited financial statements. Approval of the appointment of auditors for 2023. Election of Board of Directors. Updated purpose of incorporation. Bylaw amendments. Motion for federal continuance. Annual report overview. Consideration of any other business as may come before the meeting. May I have a motion from a director to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I, Jocelyn Brown, move that the agenda be approved.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
I, Doris Stammel, second the motion.
Thank you, Doris. Are there any questions or discussion of the agenda before we proceed with voting? If you would like to object to this motion, please type your objection in the chat. The motion has passed. Thank you. The Canadian Canoe Museum Annual General Meeting minutes were sent to all members by email in advance of this meeting. May I have a motion from a director to approve the annual general meetings minutes from June 15, 2022?
Madam Chair, I, Brian Buttigieg, move that the minutes of the last annual meeting of the members held on June 15, 2022 be approved.
Is there a seconder for this motion?
I, Doris Stammel, second the motion.
Thank you, Doris. Are there any questions or discussion of the minutes before we proceed with voting? If you would like to object to this motion, please type your objection in the chat. Are there any objections to this motion? The motion has passed. Thank you. I will now introduce the Director and Treasurer, Tim Rutherford, to discuss 2022's audited financial statements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Rutherford, and I'm the Treasurer for the museum. We have completed our fiscal year end, ending December 31st, 2022. Members have received the audited financial statements by email and on the AGM webpage in advance of this meeting. First off, I'm happy to report the museum received a clean audit from our auditors, Grant Thornton, who have provided their unqualified opinion. The board has approved these financial statements for recommendation to the membership. Here are some highlights for this year. This year, the Canadian Heritage through the Cultural Spaces Fund provided $7 million of their $10 million total commitment. Province of Ontario provided 2.8 towards their total commitment of $5 million. And the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, FedDev Ontario, provided just over $400,000 of their $750,000 commitment. The city of Peterborough, $500,000 is committed, and from Peterborough County, we have received $63,000. We're really thrilled for the fundraising dollars that were received this past year. Almost $4.5 million from more than 700 donors locally across Canada, as well as internationally, including receiving the first installment of $500,000 from the Weston Family Foundation for the 10-year program fund that will commence on opening day. Capital investment in the new museum on Little Lake is totaling $16 million of construction and project management to date. Thank you to Grant Thornton for performing the audit work this year, and to our staff, volunteer, donors, and project partners for the ongoing dedication and support. I would now like to ask if there are any questions about the audited financial statements. Hearing none or seeing none on the chat. Madam Chair, I, Tim Rutherford, move to approve the Canadian Canoe Museum 2022 audited financial statements. Do any of my fellow directors second this motion?
I, Kate Farnell, second the motion.
Are there any further questions or discussion of the audited financial statements before we proceed with voting? If you would like to object to this motion, please type your objection in the chat. Are there any objections to this motion? The motion has passed. Thank you.
The Canadian Canoe Museum would like to reappoint Grant Thornton once again as our audit firm for 2023 based on the recommendation of the Finance and Audit Committee. I'd like to propose motion number 4. Madam Chair, I, Tim Rutherford, move to approve Grant Thornton as the auditors for the Canadian Canoe Museum for our upcoming fiscal year 2023. Do any of my fellow directors second this motion?
I, Kate Farnell, second the motion.
Are there any questions or discussion before we proceed with voting? There is a question in the chat, and it says, is there a time limit on Grant Thornton's term of engagement?
Madam Chair, I don't believe our bylaws have that, but I'll defer to someone else, maybe on our panel, to confirm, or we may have to respond back. I know there has been discussion, a consideration for every 5 years doing a market review or assessment, but I don't believe there is a term limit.
Tim, if I could perhaps add to that, it's Doris Stammel. There's nothing in the bylaws addressing the term limits for auditors. And typically the appointment is annual, and we can decide how many renewals that we will provide.
Thanks, Doris.
If you would like to object to this motion, please type your objection in the chat. Are there any objections? The motion has passed. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. I will now provide an update on the status of our board of directors. Returning directors. Our bylaws allow us to have a minimum of 16 and no more than 18 board members. We currently have 15 board members who will be returning. Under our bylaws, the Canadian Canoe Museum is able to bring on directors throughout the year. We will keep you updated on any further developments. No motion is necessary as all 15 remaining board members are currently within their existing two-year term. Any persons to be elected as directors must have been proposed in advance of this meeting by the Governance and Nominating Committee or by the members as provided in the museum's bylaws. 9 of our other directors are midterm in their service. And that is Victoria Grant, Jenny Engram, Deborah Jacobs, Kevin Malone, Rafe Richardson, John Ronson, Doris Stammel, Garth Walbridge, and Phyllis Williams. 6 of our current directors up for re-election, nominated for election as directors of the museum, commencing as of today's date, are Tim Rutherford, Brian Buttigieg, and Kate Fresnel for a second term of 2 years. Meredith Brown and Brian Groves are for a third term of 2 years, and Jocelyn Brown for a fourth term of 2 years. Since there can be no further nominations as per our bylaws, I declare the nominations closed. And I want to thank all of the board members for continuing, and as we move forward, you are all those nominated have consented to act as directors of the museum. And so I declare those nominated to be duly elected directors of the museum by acclamation, and to hold office until the expiry of their respective terms for which they are elected, or until their successors are elected or appointed, whichever comes first. Outgoing directors. Val McRae joined the board in 2015 and was chair of the collections committee from 2019 to 2022, and was a longtime member of the Beaver Club Gala Committee. Robert James joined the board in 2021 and was a member of the collections committee. Thank you both for your years of service and your contributions to the museum. As the outgoing chair of the board of directors, it is my pleasure to welcome Kevin Malone as the incoming chair. Kevin served as treasurer from 2019 to 2022, and now is taking his place at the stern of the Canadian Canoe Museum's canoe. I think Kevin is having trouble with his, I think I saw in the chat that Kevin was having trouble. Did I see that?
Hello, Vic.
'Cause
Hi, Vicky. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Well, thank you, Vicky, and thank you for this introduction and passing of the paddle, so to speak. Just a few comments on Vicky. You have guided this canoe and organization for 3 incredible years as chair through a pandemic, the pivot from the lift lock site, and starting the construction on the new museum on Little Lake, no less. Since you joined the board in 2018, what has stood out is your perspective, optimism, and dedication to the organization. On behalf of not only myself, but the rest of the board, the staff, the organization, thank you for your stalwart leadership and guidance. You have brought us so far. Thank you. I would now like to introduce the Director of Governance and Nominating Committee member, Doris Stammel, to discuss the museum's articles of incorporation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Doris Stemmel. I joined the board last year, and I am thrilled to be part of the board at this very exciting time. Just a little bit about me, so you know why I'm speaking to you today, this evening. I am a lawyer. Last summer, I retired after a 30-plus year career with Ernst & Young, one of the big accounting and professional services firms. I was EY's chief legal counsel. I'm an avid camper and paddler. I reside in Toronto, but have a cottage in Haliburton. Peterborough is halfway to Haliburton, and I will be stopping often on the way to the cottage to visit our new museum. I do hope to meet many of you, our members. Since joining the board, because of my legal background, I have been helping to shepherd along the museum's federal continuance initiative, and that is what I want to address with you today. Just a reminder, for those that have been members for many years, the members agreed to move forward with a federal continuance at its 2019 general meeting. So that was approved back in 2019. For a variety of reasons, including COVID, this was delayed. The museum, however, is recommitting to move forward with the federal continuance process, which would allow the corporation to become a federal not-for-profit corporation under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. While delayed, the reasons for the continuance are even more valid today than they were in 2019. As you know, our vision speaks to our aspiration to contribute to Canada as the stewards of a world-class collection of canoes and kayaks and artifacts, which have been declared a cultural asset of national significance. With our new museum, we will continue to move on to the national stage. The Governor General of Canada has granted us viceregal patronage in recognition of our work. We have attracted a board of directors from across Canada, and we've developed a national council of proud ambassadors of the canoe and the museum with members from coast to coast to coast. So we think that it makes sense to move to a federal jurisdiction. The continuance process involves filing articles of continuance and other forms with the federal government and receiving a certificate of continuance upon approval. The Canadian Canoe, just to clarify, the museum will remain a not-for-profit member organization and will retain its charitable registration status. Effectively, it is being exported out of the provincial legislation, the Ontario legislation, and being imported into the federal legislation. So the following items are being brought forward to you, the members, tonight for consideration and approval to allow this process to proceed. First of all, we're asking you to approve an updated purpose statement, which I'll talk about in a minute, the approval of updated bylaws, and the overall approval to proceed with the above amendments and to apply for articles of federal continuance. So first, let me talk about purpose of the corporation. The main substantive change of continuance is a restatement of the museum's purpose. Effectively, we are updating the objects of the museum, which were set out in letters patent filed in 1975. So our core purpose of maintaining a repository of artifacts remains the same, but the language of the old objects are outdated. And for example, in the 1975 letters patent, the language referenced a collection of Indian and pioneer relic artifacts and antiquities. Clearly, this language needed to be updated. So we are proposing to put a new purpose in the articles of continuation. And I think it merits reading it so that you focus on it. It aligns very much to our current mission, values, and vision. So I will read to you the proposed purpose. The Canadian Canoe Museum exists in order to steward, promote, and facilitate access to the museum's collection of canoes, kayaks, related artifacts, and archival materials in a facility that meets Canadian Class A museum environmental control standards. Provide educational opportunities through the creation and delivery of programming to audiences of all ages. And C, reflect the wide and diverse perspectives revealed through the museum's ongoing research, outreach, and collaborative relationships. Relationship development with Indigenous and non-Indigenous knowledge holders. So we are asking for your approval to amend the purpose of the corporation. A draft special resolution was included in the AGM package that was sent to you on April 14th and is also on the website. The special resolution reads as follows. And it may not be posted, but it is in your materials. There are a number of whereases in the resolution that lawyers like to put in, but I'm not going to read you all of the whereases, but just the proposed resolutions. And they are A, that the directors of the corporation are hereby directed to take all steps necessary to seek the approval of the amended purposes by the charity's directive, subject to the, let me try that one again. The directors of the corporation are hereby directed to take all steps necessary to seek the approval of the amended purposes by the charity's directorate of the CRA. And just to be clear, we will not move forward with continuance until we have the approval of the CRA charities directive. We don't believe that there will be any issues, but we want to make sure that there is approval by the charities CRA. B, upon receipt of the approval of the amended purposes from the charities directorate, the purposes of the corporation shall be those amended purposes which I just read to you. And C, upon approval of the amended purposes from the charities directorate, the articles of the corporation shall be amended as follows. And the purpose is, as I've just read to you, the statement of purposes. And so that will be the revised purpose of the organization. And lastly, D, that the directors of the corporation are hereby directed to take all steps necessary and make all filings required to give effect to this resolution, including amending the articles. The directors are also further authorized to make minor changes to the amended purposes. So, Madam Chair, I, Doris Stamo, move to approve the special resolution of the members of the Canadian Canoe Museum to amend the purpose of the corporation as I have just read and outlined above. Do any of my fellow directors second this motion?
I, John Ronson, second the motion.
Are there any further questions or discussion of the purpose of the corporation before we proceed with voting? If you would like to object to this motion, please type your objection in the chat. Are there any objections? This special resolution has been approved by at least 2/3 of the members attending a meeting of the members of the corporation. This special resolution has been consented by all members of the corporations as of the 19th day of April, 2023, not 19.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would now like to address briefly certain bylaw amendments. The Governance and Nominating Committee has recommended revisions to the museum's bylaws to ensure good governance practices and to be in accordance with the requirements of the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. The proposed bylaw amendments are also included in your AGM package for your review. They have been reviewed and approved by our external counsel. The changes are very minor. When the bylaw was amended a few years ago, we contemplated a federal continuance. So these bylaw amendments that are set out here are really very much tweaks to the existing bylaw. But let me review them very quickly. The Finance Committee, firstly, Section 205, the Finance Committee has been renamed as the Finance and Audit Committee, and a Philanthropy Committee has been added as a standing committee. We've clarified that there are one-year term extensions for the chair of the board. We've also, in Section 8, we've added a requirement for approval for membership applications. And we've clarified that corporate memberships will no longer be permitted. In fact, we do not actually have any corporate members. Section 9, we've clarified the process for a member to submit a proposal for inclusion in the AGM and a notice of meeting. In Section 906, we've expanded the member voting options to include by proxy, mail-in ballot, and electronic voting, with meetings to be held in person, virtually, or a hybrid of the two. Clarification in Section 11, we've clarified the process of member approval of the board changes to the bylaw. Boards can approve amendments to the bylaw, but the amendments are not effective until members have confirmed those amendments. Amendments to the, in 1102, amendments to the bylaw can be confirmed by ordinary resolution as opposed to special resolution, which is in accordance with the Federal Act. So those are the bylaw changes that will accompany this federal continuance process.
Doris, this is Urchella. I just want to ask a question that came up in the chat here. It asks if there is an expansion or modification of the duties and responsibilities in the Finance and Audit Committee in accordance with the name change.
There have been no changes to the role of the committee. I think you will see that that is, for those that are following these things carefully, that is in section that is in section 205. And there have been no changes to their role. Although let me just read what this says now, just so that we're clear. The Finance and Audit Committee shall be comprised of at least 3 members, 3 of whom shall be directors, a majority of whom are not employees or officers of the corporation. Otherwise, the roles are the same.
I think it's fair to say, Doris, that the name change of the title of the committee is to more accurately reflect the duties, as opposed to just the Finance Committee, which was the previous title. Is that fair? Is that fair?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Next, we will proceed to the motions that we need to give us the go-ahead to go ahead with the federal continuance. In order to proceed with federal continuance and approve the necessary bylaw amendments, we require the approval of the members. A special resolution was included in the AGM package, and the special resolution is now posted on your screen. Again, I'm not going to read through the whereases. So Kate, if you could go to the next slide. The resolutions that we are seeking are A, upon receiving approval of the amended purposes by the Charities Directorate of the CRA, the directors of the corporation are authorized and directed to make an application under the Not-for-Profit Act to the director appointed under the Act for a certificate of continuance of the corporation. The articles of continuance of the corporation, which have been submitted to this meeting and are annexed to these minutes, they are approved. C, the current bylaws of the corporation are repealed effective on this date, and the new general operating bylaw number 1, which has been submitted to this meeting and is annexed to these minutes, are approved and will be effective on the same date. And that any one of the officers or directors of the corporation is authorized to take all such actions and execute and deliver all documentation, including the articles of continuance and the notice of registered office of directors in the forms required by the director, which are necessary or desirable for the implementation of this resolution to effect the continuance. So, Madam Chair, I, Doris Stammel, move to approve the continuance of the corporation under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act and approve the operational bylaws as I have noted above. Do any of my fellow directors second this motion?
I, John Ronson, second the motion, Doris.
Are there any further questions or discussion on the continuance of the corporation before we proceed with voting? If you would like to object to this motion, please type your objection in the chat. Are there any objections? This special resolution has been approved by at least 2/3 of the members attending a meeting of the members of the corporation. This special resolution has been consented to by all members of the corporation as of the 19th day of April 2023. Our team is currently working on the 2022 annual report to share the journey of this past year. It will be available. So it will be soon available on our website and circulated by email. After our formal business concludes, Carolyn and Jeremy will be reflecting on 2022, as well as providing a new museum project update. No resolutions or consideration of any other business was raised ahead of the meeting. Rochella, do we have any lingering questions from the chat that needs to be addressed?
No, we don't, Victoria.
Thanks. That wraps up the official portion of our annual general meeting. We'll officially adjourn the business portion of the meeting. May I have a motion from a director to adjourn the meeting?
Madam Chair, I, Brian Groves, move that the meeting be adjourned.
Is there a seconder for this motion?
I, Meredith Brown, second this motion.
The motion has passed. I call the formal business of our 2023 AGM to a close. And as just, I would like to actually make some closing remarks as the outgoing chair of the board. I can tell you that I've really enjoyed my time as chair of the museum and working with the board of directors that have been duly elected. I look forward to the day that we can walk through that museum door and see us in our new home. I remember sitting with John Ronson as when I came on the board, and it was to open the new museum, and that didn't happen. I had a much more exciting time as chair of the board. As it turns out, we didn't just open a museum and keep operating. We pivoted, changed, and 2022 was an exciting year. Or 2021 was the year that, and on top of that, we had COVID. So it was a very exciting time. I'm going to introduce Kevin, who has been with Bank of Montreal Financial Group for over 30 years in senior leadership roles with two business groups, BMO Wealth Management and BMO Capital Markets. He has an MBA from the Richard Ivey School of Business, University of Western Ontario, a Bachelor of Arts from Queen's University, and a certificate from the Soder School of Business Family Enterprise Advisor Program at the University of British Columbia. Kevin is active in the community. He is a trustee of the Lakefield College School, a director and past president of the Duke of Edinburgh Awards Program National Board. He has served on a number of fundraising committees for a number of not-for-profit organizations, including the Nature Conservancy of Canada, Stratford Express, and Dixon Hall. Kevin is a recipient of Her Majesty the Queen Golden Jubilee Medal in 2002, the Diamond Jubilee Medal 2012, and a recipient of the commemorative coin in honor of the Duke of Edinburgh for volunteer service. Kevin and his wife Mona are proud parents to 3 children, and as a family are actively involved in amateur sports, travel, and the arts, and numerous charitable organizations. He joined the board in 2018 and was the Finance and Audit Committee Chair from 2019 to 2022. And he is currently leading he is currently the fundraising cabinet chair. And I'll turn it over to Kevin to make his remarks.
That's great, Vicki, and thank you for your comments. I would just like to take some time right now just to reflect on Vicki's contribution to the Canadian Canoe Museum. Vicki's time as chair for the Canoe Museum was during one of the most interesting and complex times for the museum, yet she has been exactly the leader of the board, our executive director, and the organization as needed. Vicki's depth of experience in board governance was critical in the success of our transition from the Lift Lock project to the current Johnson site project at Little Lake. Countless hours invested in task forces, feasibility studies, donor and funder meetings, and board and committee meetings. She's really led the way by example. Vicki's ability to create spaces and time for open communication has been invaluable and has made the board a stronger and much more unified team. Her extensive network has helped CCM recruit a more representative and inclusive board that better reflects the peoples of this country. However, it's really Vicki's commitment to the canoes and their stories and their critical importance in building them a new home that has been a driving force in every decision made and asked for over the last 3 years. That clarity of focus and purpose is truly a testament to her dedication to the mission of the organization. Again, on behalf of the board, Vicki, staff and membership, volunteers, and the wider community, thank you for everything you've given during your time as chair. A big, big thank you. Over the past 10 plus years, we've enjoyed great leadership and counsel from our chairs, including Bill Morris and John Ronson. I look forward to continuing in their footsteps. My first task, which is probably very obvious, is to assist the board and Carolyn's team in the completion of the construction of the museum's new home and help them create a best-in-class museum and customer experience that tells the importance of the canoe in our Canadian history. I would like now to introduce Carolyn, our executive director, and Jeremy, our curator. We are very fortunate to have Carolyn and Jeremy at the museum. Both are tireless and devoted leaders who are leading the new museum project. They have been the steady hand that we have needed in transitioning the museum from our current Monaghan location to our new home on Little Lake. Over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Kevin. Very wonderful to have you coming in as our chair at this point in the organization's history. And we've really enjoyed working together in your different capacities, both at finance and also now and fundraising, and now as chair. So we are going to have a lot of fun together, which is fantastic.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And I would like to thank Vicki. Vicki, your leadership during the last 3 years for me has been outstanding. And for those that don't get to see Vicky's leadership behind the scenes and at the board, she is fantastic to work with. Always available, always insightful, and providing excellent guidance through all of the difficult decisions we've had to make, and also the celebrations that we've been fortunate to have over the course of the last 3 years. I'll share a story before we go into reflections of 2022. In the dark days when we did not have a site for this new museum project, we brought Vicky to Peterborough to walk a number of potential sites that we were looking at and determining the feasibility of these locations and how well they would suit a project, a new museum building, and the vision that we had for the programming and a proper home for the canoes and the collection. And we walked around Little Lake and we arrived at the Johnson site. And we were standing on the western point of the Johnson site under the great big willow, looking out over the lake, over Little Lake, with our architect, who were conducting a feasibility work with us, and our project director, Chris McLean, and Jeremy, and a number of others. And by the time we arrived at that point and we were looking out over the lake, this was the site that we were sort of hoping Vicky would really like. We were thinking, if this is it, she's going to figure out a way to make it happen. And we stood there and it was crystal clear. This is the location. And Vicky said to the team that was trying to determine feasibility, this is where we're going to build the Canoe Museum. And they said, oh, it's all complicated. It's got all these studies, and yeah, it's a bit of floodplain and it's going to be hard to get permits. And she just said, no, this is where the Canoe Museum is going to go. And that sort of determination has been a guiding force for this museum and myself for the last 3 years. And it's an honor to have worked with you, Vicky. And I can't wait to keep working with you in a different capacity, and really grateful for the work that you've put into the Canoe Museum and the friendships that we've developed over the years. So thank you. Chi-miigwech.
You.
And so now we reflect on 2022. And it's, we're in April of 2023. So 2022 is so done in my mind, but it's really nice to step back in these moments at our annual meeting and to share with you some of the highlights from 2022 that we may not have shared and that we want to make sure that everybody is aware of. And this is a beautiful shot from the creek, the bow, it's actually the stern of the canoe, looking out at one of where our future docks will be on our new museum property. And the journey this past year, has had its various ups and downs. In October of 2021, we broke ground at our new location, and we're working with our project team to bring the new museum to life and to really start construction. So January of 2022 started off with a number of ups and downs, openings and closures, virtual programming, museum being open and not open. And then come May, when we thought that things were just on the up and we were about to open for the summer tourism season, the May long weekend storm, the Derecho, hit the museum really hard and damaged our existing roof of the current museum, and really set us back a number of weeks. But the really neat thing that came from that is that there was such a huge pitch in by all of our partners and friends within the community, our volunteers and staff and members, outward support for everything that we were doing, and really privileged to be able to have weathered that storm with the team that we have. And then the end of the summer in September was when we closed our doors at 910 Monaghan to the visiting public to allow us to prepare the full collection for its eventual move across town to Little Lake. And the sharing stories from the many years at 910 Monaghan with our community, both in person and virtual, was a really poignant moment for me personally, after having spent so many years at the Canoe Museum, and to sort of say goodbye and to thank the space for all of the stories and the memories that it's held. And of course, we needed to start moving our collection.
Right, my turn. Good evening, everybody. Great to be with you. Well, here we are now. This the pile of timbers in the lower left, these are the bones of that timber frame structure from where we hosted that farewell storytelling event last summer to mark the occasion. The largest artifact in the museum's collection, of course, all stacked up here and ready to go. And it'll be the first of the artifacts that the museum cares for to move into the new museum. Once the museum was closed, the key was to gently and carefully remove all of the canoes that have been on exhibit, some of them for quite a long time, from their slings, from their mounts, from overhead suspension, and get them through the whole process of treatment and preparation for the move. Because we have the fabulous team we have here at the Canoe Museum has been working on, in the meantime, all of the canoes that are in storage. They're completed, and now our time is to take the canoes from exhibit and get them ready. And here you can see the wonderful 24-foot James Bay Cree-made freighter canoe named Chichu coming out stern first from the front door. This is a breech berth. It's a very delicate operation, as you can see, and she's out. I would observe too that the whole dismantling of the exhibits has been another cathartic process and helping a farewell. I know a number of you on the meeting tonight helped put those exhibits up in the first place, and I was also involved, and personally it was been very moving to pull things down and dismantle them, see how they were put up, and remember those moments as the magic of this museum was being created in the very first place. Next slide, Carolyn. So here we are. This is another sort of closing of a cycle. Over 2 decades ago, a lot of the canoes lifted to the second floor for exhibit were lifted up by crane. And again, some of the volunteers who helped us make that very important step helped us bring these canoes safely down to the ground level and carried down to the back building, where the team would carefully process them and get them ready for the move as well. We had 13 large canoes and a stump of a red cedar log that was the remains of a log that had been turned into a beautiful canoe in our collection. These are the largest and heaviest objects in the museum. One big takeaway from this was our new museum does not need a crane like this. In fact, we've learned this lesson very well, and we've built a building that has something like a crane built into its structure inside. And so we won't be doing this perilous exercise, lifting canoes from the collection hall in the new home upstairs to the exhibition hall. It'll all be done inside and by our internal team. Carolyn.
We had a number of relationships that were built, new relationships created, and existing relationships built upon. Really grateful to have hosted the Governor General at the Canadian Canoe Museum in October. In summer, she announced that she was granting the Canoe Museum her vice-regal patronage for the work that the Canoe Museum has been doing around reconciliation and education. And so to be able to have her for just 20 minutes, 40 minutes to see the full collection and to meet the extended team, it was a really enjoyable visit, and really look forward to the future with Mary Simon. Of course, a number of speaking engagements that happen, some public, some not public, some in person, some over Zoom, had the privilege of presenting and sharing the project with a very wonderful group at Camp Pathfinder up in Algonquin Park. Events at the BMO as a fundraising event. We had a fundraising event. This is center picture here on Stony Lake. Gorgeous day to be sharing the Canoe Museum's project with a relatively fresh group of folks that weren't that familiar with what the Canoe Museum was up to. Of course, presentations at the Wilderness Canoe Association and many, many more. And this is on the right with Dan Brandsma, the owner of the Silver Bean Cafe. And this is a brand new partnership between the Canoe Museum and the Silver Bean. And of course, as many of you will know, Dan will be serving up cappuccinos and tea and all kinds of good food at the new museum as our cafe provider. And really excited for the partnership that we'll be having with Dan and his extended team. We really align with our values and that community spirit. So really looking forward to that.
Oh, what beautiful pictures here to speak from. This project has really allowed us to amplify work that we've been doing for decades now, but in a very meaningful way from coast to coast to coast. Honoring the collection is so important for an organization as it, I think, reinvents itself and the roles it can serve going forward. To support the exhibits, to understand collections care, we've been traveling virtually and building relations with people of all backgrounds to develop the exhibits and to understand the collection better and to better share it. And specifically with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, the content has been a really enriching process that is being co-archived. So it's being shared through the museum to a new audience, but also is being archived at their chosen repository, whether it's in community or with family. The picture on the lower left, as you can see, is a canoe launch. This is one of the newest canoes that has been brought to the museum. This is a beautiful canoe made by Mi'kmaq canoe makers Todd Labrador and his daughter Melissa Labrador down near Kejimkujik, bottom end of Nova Scotia. And it's a 21-foot rough water, saltwater going canoe that has been built for the Canoe Museum, along with stories and images, some video and content that we cannot wait to show you once it's installed and featured in the new museum. If you're specifically looking for where it will be found in the Design Ingenuity and the Maker exhibit. In the middle is another wonderful story and an object received to the museum. This is a hayek or a kayak made by the youth in community Puvirnituk in northern Quebec at the Éguard Civic School. And this is a ballistic nylon stretched over frame local style kayak that the youth built to be also featured in our new museum in a different exhibit zone, where it will accompany a kayak that was made over 50 years by community members of their grandparents' generation. So there will be a pairing of a youth build with an older kayak, which we're very proud of. I will also mention that the gentleman in the middle, who is the instructor, Alain Cloutier, is actually here at the Canoe Museum today, just dropped in to meet another individual named Harvey Golden, who's here, who's been documenting kayaks in our collection in order to share that information outward to a broader reach. So we're building, we're able to facilitate great conversations around the country, which we're very proud of. Next slide, Carolyn.
And of course, the building. When we're not doing all this good work, the building is going up. And 2022 is really marked by the foundational work that needs to take place for the rest of the building to start to manifest. And so over the course of last year, we saw the foundations and concrete being put in, the structure rising up out of the ground. That for a long time, there were the two stair towers, the north and the south stair towers. That was all that was there. And then soon the steel started going up, and then the timbers started showing up, and this beautiful, the bones of the building were standing. And that moment that was a moment when a lot of people really started noticing the the building, and we started to get a lot of fantastic feedback. Really exciting for us as well to start to be able to do site tours with Vicky and with other board members and donors and funders and friends of the museum. So that was a really exciting part of 2022 for us, absolutely. And of course, we started deepening the work around exhibition development as well. And all of this wouldn't be happening without the donors and the funders that are making the project come to life. And so the government funders, and then in the beginning, I think it was in the fall of 2022, we announced support from FedDev Ontario through the Tourism Relief Fund for $750,000 towards our exhibition development. And then the picture on the right is of that's John and Sheila Grant in the canoe, and their support. The Grant family extended $250,000 in support for the Canadian Canoe Museum in honor of Sheila and all of the work that she had done with the Canoe Museum and her passion for paddling and wanting to have that important legacy part of the new museum. And here's all right. Well, everything is happening: fundraising, new build, exhibition development. There's a ton of marketing and communications work that's also happening in addition to everything else. And so this is the lovely little piece along with these renderings where we've really started to amplify the profile of the organization across the country from coast to coast to coast. And so that was a piece that we shared with the Ottawa Outdoor Adventure Show, and just to grab a couple of snapshots of this building that we're so proud of, that we're starting to come together. And so we look at 2023 and the work that we're sort of starting to think about. And we started the year up north in Thunder Bay, and starting the journey. For the first time, I was able to go and visit the site of the pictograph that is the logo of the Canadian Canoe Museum. And part of that work is going back and paying respects to the logo and to the rock, but also to build the relationships on the traditional territory of the peoples of Fort William First Nation. And so that was a first journey for me. I know it's a first journey for Jeremy. We had James with us, of course, to show us around and to meet the folks. And we had that'll be an ongoing piece for the organization to continue to explore that. And that's absolutely about the relationship building that the organization needs to be doing and should be doing with Fort William First Nation and the peoples within that community. And so the picture on the right is, sorry, I just got to move my screen here. The picture on the right is some of the new people that we're introducing to the Canadian Canoe Museum. And this is from the announcement that we just announced at the beginning of the year of Stu and Kim Lang joining the campaign with a significant contribution of $1.775 million towards the outdoor campus and the waterfront. And so we had a lovely walk around with Stu and a number of our fundraising cabinet members and our Helen Batten of our landscape architect, and sharing this project with so many other people so that the excitement can build and grow. Jeremy.
Oh, we're so excited about this image. And if you look carefully in the picture, you will see that there are appropriately 3 lines to the name of the Canoe Museum. French and English, of course, have always been an offering at the Canoe Museum in our exhibit experience, but to the organization itself and to the experience through signage and wayfinding and indeed the exhibits. Michisagi dialect of Anishinaabemowin. We are located, privileged to be located on Mississauga territories here, Treaty 20 and Williams treaties. And so we've been working, honored to be working with Monty Taylor and Ann Taylor, language holders in Curve Lake First Nation, and they have given to the organization Nishnabemo in terms for all of the space names in the museum and to the Canoe Museum itself. If you look carefully, Jiman Kinomagewen, it does not mean, of course, the Canadian Canoe Museum. Jiman is canoe and Kinomagewen is a learning place, teaching place. And so this is the learning place of the canoe. We couldn't be happier. It's a perfect name. Can't wait also for all of us just to explore the place and discover all of the words and what they mean for the different places in the museum. And of course, as we go into the exhibits, you will see that it hosts many other Indigenous languages in that space as well. I did not put this slide together. I'm just going to say, and I think the point being made here is Jeremy only has one sweater, and that's what 3 years. That's what 3 years of Zoom will do to you. I do need to get out more. But in terms of the exhibits and the fabulous work that's been happening behind the scenes and across the country, we've been working with community coordinators, knowledge holders, experts, language speakers, and so on. And the content flow is really feeding in to the exhibit development. We also have one more example of watercraft that is due to arrive not long from now. This is coming in from Iqaluit, from the Kayak Society in Iqaluit, and they're building regional style kayak. They've been working with elders and the expertise of the makers there, and that's due to arrive. In the months ahead, we'll be finalizing on the actual content, a really terrific team here locally, assisted by contributors and experts across the country. So we'll be finalizing on the content with the contributors that will be featured there. There's a great deal of work on image selection, text, of course, and exhibit copy. Film work is underway, and we're well underway now with a lot of the fabricators, and you can see some images here. But this is millwork. This is down in Pontypool in the lower left, looking at the bones for an important feature seating facility. A strange picture of yours truly here with my ear to a stick. This is a prototype to test the audio components hidden in this. This is a technique of listening underwater by listening through a kayak paddle, and just to see that the speaker systems work well in that as well. So much work underway. It's heady times. It's terrific, and we can't wait to begin rolling these materials into the new museum exhibit hall.
And of course, we can't open this museum without programming. And so we've got a fantastic team that's starting to build the programs for the new museum. So the outdoor programs that'll be on the water, but also the indoor programs for school programs, and the visiting public, the artisan workshops that many of you have probably participated in, probably taught. We are building those up and expanding on them, because we finally have outdoor space to be able to do a lot of the programming, like Campfire Circle, the Canoe House in the bottom right. If you haven't seen it of late, the framing, the roof trusses are up on the Canoe House, and the Canoe House is as the closest building to the lake, just along the Trans-Canada Trail, and it'll be really the hub of where a lot of the outdoor programming will be based out of. And of course, in the winter, place where all of our canoes, big canoes and tandem canoes will be stored, and all of our program gear. And it also is a great space to open up the barn doors on the side and have it as a pavilion for a teaching space on a nice sunny spring day or a beautiful fall day. And of course, we wouldn't we wouldn't be able to do this without the museum itself. And we're starting to have visits to the site itself, and to us imagining the size of the space and where we're going to do this program, and what does it feel like to be in the event room looking out over the lake through the big window from the terrace, and realizing not only are we doing education programs, but all the programs for the visiting public, the event rentals, the weddings, the packages that we're developing for travel trade and the international tourism market that's coming to the Canoe Museum as a destination. All of that work is happening in the background, and we're looking forward to rolling that out as we get closer to opening day. And so a lot of change from 2022 in that we've got the vapor barrier. This is a shot on the left here of the roof of the, I guess it's the eastern side of the roof being, this is the gray part here, that's got the plywood and the insulation, and it's ready for its sort of final layer, its metal roof layer. And they're starting to work all the way over to the end of the building and working on the west side as well. And man, we've got an amazing group of folks working in this building. It's such a joy to be able to walk through the space and starting to get to know the people that are building, like they're truly building our home. And great shot here of two guys from the Lancer team that are doing beautiful work with all of the electrical conduit work up high, and it's its own piece of art in addition to the architecture of this building. And then the picture on the right is the view from the west. So from the lake, looking back at the building, or at the front of the building, depending on which way you're coming in, all the studding and the stud frames are going up on the exterior, and the sheeting. And it is a happening place. It's busy, and as we've been going through just getting into the better weather and seeing how fast things are really coming together, it's pretty exciting. Yeah, it's really beautiful. Like this, it's a stunning space, and it's actually makes us really happy to be on the property. Yeah.
I think people know this, but we're doing a very strange occupancy where we're starting to move in before the building is officially handed over, which of course would be a contractor's nightmare. But we were just in there today looking at them taping the exhibition hall, which is the right-hand image here, and couldn't be more excited about that, waiting for the drywall to be complete so we can have it painted, and then we start moving our exhibits in, and that'll be starting in May. And then downstairs in June, we start flowing the collection into the collection hall, probably later in June. But this is all just on the around the corner for us, and we are like dogs at the door waiting to get out. We're waiting, very excited to get in.
Yeah. I know probably everybody, the only question that will probably show up in the chat by all 65 of you will be, when are you opening? And I don't want to make light of that, but we are waiting for, as we announced earlier in the year, that we are experiencing delays just like any other project. This is a major capital infrastructure project, and it's complex, and there's a lot of different things at play. And so we are delayed in opening. As you know, we were aiming for early summer. We've had to push that off, and right now we're looking at the fall of this year to be opening the new museum. But we are looking for guidance from our project team to give us that final date so that we can announce that. And there's a few more milestones that need to be reached in order for everybody to have the comfort in announcing that date with us, and not wanting to change it either. So we don't have anything firm for you tonight to share, and I sure wish we did, but we don't, and so my apologies for that. However, we are making great progress. And I believe it was Phyllis Williams, one of our board members yesterday. She just reminded me that it is going to happen when it happens, Carolyn. And I don't quite accept that, Phyllis, but I do know it'll be here before we know it. And we'll all be there to witness it and celebrate its arrival. And so stay tuned, and we hope to be bringing as soon as we possibly can to be announcing what that opening day is. And when we do open, we want to open with everything. So our program's ready to go, our exhibition's fully installed, the collection in the collection hall, and so that we don't have to wear hard hats like Laura here on the left when we're on opening day. So stay tuned and be patient, and keep sending your good wishes our way, as hoping for good weather and excellent progress. And the budget. So the other fun part of the work is continuing to raise the funds for this project. As a not-for-profit charitable organization, we are raising the dollars that's making this project happen, and we're grateful for the kind of support that we've had to date. We have just under $2 million to go, and that $2 million that we're looking to raise before opening day. We've got a really incredible fundraising cabinet, but we are looking for other individuals, foundations, corporations to help us finish the final portage. And that may be $10, that may be $100, that may be $100,000. We need it all. So if you can think of anybody that you aren't sure that we've approached yet, please get in touch, and we'll be happy to sort of facilitate that connection as best as we can. But kudos to the folks that are already giving. This is just a snapshot of a number of individuals and corporations and donors, over $250,000. And there's hundreds and hundreds of others that are below the $250,000 level that have all contributed to make our canoe be where we are today, and really proud of what we've accomplished. And that accomplishment starts with those of us that are volunteering for this Canadian Canoe Museum. So as part of National Volunteer Week, I wanted to do a big shout out to all of our volunteers that have helped to make this organization who we are today, and continue to invest their time and resources and expertise to make the Canoe Museum even better. And so big kudos to the board and to all of the volunteers that are doing this great work.
And I would just add very briefly that we are also marking the passing of a stalwart volunteer in our wood shop. This is Don Duncan, who's been with us quite a long time. And we miss you, Don. Sorry you couldn't be with us for this opening.
And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining and for all of your support and your enthusiasm for this project. And please know that that's appreciated and felt, and happy to answer any questions if people have any. I'm going to close off the evening and wish everybody well, and looking forward to seeing you on opening day or beyond. Thank you very much.